Pichushkin had been hiding in plain sight all along, using his status as a police officer to gain trust and avoid suspicion. His position within law enforcement meant that he had access to resources, knowledge, and the ability to manipulate investigations. He knew how to evade capture, how to leave minimal evidence behind, and how to act as though he were the protector rather than the predator. But as more evidence came to light, the authorities grew more focused on one particular suspect, Alexander Pichushkin, a 33-year-old police officer with a quiet demeanor, had been working in a local precinct. Though outwardly ordinary, Pichushkin had begun to attract the attention of investigators. The DNA samples collected at the crime scenes matched his, and as his history was examined, the investigators began to see a terrifying pattern emerging. Pichushkin's confession won. Authorities confronted Pichushkin with the evidence. He initially denied any involvement in the murders. However, as more evidence mounted against him, including the DNA samples found at multiple crime scenes, Pichushkin's fate began to crack. In the face of undeniable evidence, he confessed to his crimes. His confession was chilling in its coldness. Pichushkin admitted that his killings were not driven by a need for money or revenge, but by a deep, consuming obsession. He revealed that he had carefully planned each murder, carefully selecting his victims, each one representing a square on the chessboard that he had created in his mind. Pichushkin's obsession with chess was not just a hobby, it was a framework through which he justified his killings. He believed that he was a predator, a master of the game of life and death, and he saw his victims as mere pieces on his board. Pichushkin's confession was filled with disturbing details, many of which seemed to suggest a man who was deeply detached from his actions. He spoke about his killings in a matter-of-fact way, describing each one as if he were talking about a game, rather than the brutal murder of another human being. He claimed that he wanted to kill 60 for people, one for each square on a chessboard, and that he had enjoyed every murder in total. Pichushkin confessed to killing at least 48 people, though he claimed that the number was closer to 64. His victims had been chosen for their vulnerability, and Pichushkin went to great lengths to ensure that each murder went undetected for as long as possible. He would lure his victims to isolated areas, often under the pretext of offering them a drink or helping them in some way, before bludgeoning them to death. His knowledge of police work allowed him to avoid detection, making him even more dangerous. Pichushkin's psychological profile. What drove Alexander Pichushkin to become the chessboard killer? Psychologists and criminal experts who studied his case sought to understand the mind of a man who had lived such a double life, hiding his monstrous tendencies beneath the surface of an ordinary police officer. Pichushkin displayed many of the classic traits of a psychopath: a lack of empathy, an ability to deceive others, and a sense of superiority over his victims. His actions were calculated and methodical, and he seemed to derive pleasure not just from killing,